You think your neighbors are normal? Wait until you see what they do for a plastic trophy. We're talking lawsuits over pumpkins, assault charges at bake sales, and grown men weeping over lawn stripes. This isn't just friendly competition. It's total suburban warfare where dignity goes to die, and restraining orders are just part of the strategy. 1. Halloween used to be about plastic vampire teeth and sugar comas, but in one specific subdivision, it morphed into a corporate nightmare. One house destroyed the curve by handing out full-size bars with trackable QR codes for loyalty points, creating a customer retention program for 6-year-olds. Then the neighbor across the street implemented actual surge pricing, offering premium king-size treats only during low-traffic windows. Parents were out on the sidewalk with headsets, mapping optimal routes like logistics managers for a shipping company. The local PTA eventually had to force a ceasefire because the children had established a secondary derivatives market for chocolate futures right behind the jungle gym. 2. Let's be honest. The modern elementary school science fair is nothing more than an ego contest for insecure fathers with engineering degrees. It stopped being about baking soda volcanoes years ago. One competition became so cutthroat that parents were conducting postdoctoral research while their 8-year-old sat in the corner eating glue. One dad literally built a functioning particle accelerator in his garage for a project on atoms, which is hilarious because his daughter still believes the tooth fairy is real. The administration finally snapped and now requires notarized affidavits swearing the child actually touched the project at least once without parental supervision. 3. There is no drama on earth quite like small-town community theater drama, especially when the annual Christmas nativity play is at stake. The auditions for this production became a blood sport that would terrify Broadway producers. Participants were hiring professional acting coaches from the city and filming cinematic audition tapes with drones. But the absolute peak of insanity was one woman who was so desperate to land the lead role that she legally changed her first name to Mary. She honestly believed the director couldn't deny her the part of the Virgin Mary if it was already on her driver's license. That is a level of commitment that requires medication. 4. Gardening is supposed to be a relaxing hobby for retirees, but not when the title of World's Largest Pumpkin is on the line. Two neighbors, let's call them Jim and Dave, dropped about $4,000 each on military-grade fertilizer and experimental growth hormones. They treated these gourds better than their own grandchildren. When the final measurements showed Jim's pumpkin was a single inch wider, Dave didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he formally accused the pumpkin of being on steroids and demanded a urinalysis. You haven't seen true American pettiness until you've seen a grown man demanding a drug test for a squash. 5. The world of suburban food blogging is surprisingly violent, but two local influencers took it to a level that required actual legal intervention. What started as a rivalry for the best brunch spot spiraled into a culinary Cold War. They created armies of fake social media accounts to downvote each other and hired professional photographers to stage unflattering photos of the other's meals. They even coordinated their review schedules like tactical military strikes to bury each other's content. It only ended when a judge had to issue mutual restraining orders. Imagine having a criminal record because you were too aggressive about a review for avocado toast. 6. You might think the competitive spirit fades with age, but the annual spelling bee at this retirement home proves that ruthlessness is timeless. The competition escalated from a nice afternoon activity to psychological warfare when the 70-year-olds started hiring memory coaches and building complex flashcard systems for obscure medical terminology. But the scandal broke when one gentleman was caught wearing special reading glasses. He hadn't just updated his prescription. He had installed a miniature teleprompter inside the lens to cheat during the final round. The event was canceled amidst accusations of performance-enhancing vitamins, a sentence I never thought I would have to say. 7. Bob didn't just want to win the neighborhood Halloween display contest. He wanted to inflict permanent psychological scarring. His determination led him to study Hollywood-level special effects and install industrial fog machines that reduced visibility to zero. He created a haunted yard so genuinely terrifying that the local children didn't just get scared. They required actual therapy sessions. We are talking about first graders discussing their trauma with professionals because Bob wanted a plastic trophy. The city council had to hold an emergency meeting and pass a specific ordinance defining family-friendly, mostly to stop Bob from turning the cul-de-sac into a literal horror movie set. 8. Potato salad is the blandest side dish known to man, yet it managed to cause a civil war at one annual neighborhood block party. The competition escalated when contestants decided store-bought ingredients were for peasants. People started growing their own potatoes in specialized soil and interrogating German immigrants to steal family secrets. The madness peaked when one woman actually booked a flight to Idaho. She didn't go for a vacation. She went solely to source specific russet varieties from individual farms she had researched for 6 months. When you are burning jet fuel to acquire tubers for a backyard barbecue, you have officially lost the plot. 9. Frank's determination to create the ultimate Super Bowl party dip went so far off the rails that he actually hired a food scientist to study flavor profiles. He wasn't just melting Velveeta in a microwave, he was testing 17 different cheese combinations in a basement laboratory that rivaled the CDC. He even built a custom temperature-controlled serving station to ensure the viscosity remained optimal for the entire 4 quarters of the game. The health department eventually had to inspect his kitchen because he was essentially operating a commercial-grade chemical facility just to feed his drunk friends some tortilla chips. 10. The community center's annual cakewalk is supposed to be a fun game of chance, but Betty turned it into a lesson in economic warfare. She started bribing other participants with homemade cookies to essentially buy their silence and avoid her specific slot number. She was fixing the game to ensure she won the premium German chocolate cake every single week, like a dessert mafia boss. It got so bad that the other participants formed a coalition and hired a freelance statistician to calculate the optimal bidding strategies just to break her monopoly on the baked goods. 11. You know the economy is rough when 2 suburban mothers turn their children's lemonade stands into cutthroat corporate enterprises. We are talking about extensive market research, branded cups, and supply chain logistics for a 50-cent drink. One mother literally hired a teenage marketing consultant to handle the rebranding strategy. The rivalry only ended when the local police shut both stands down for operating without business licenses or health department permits. Nothing teaches kids about American capitalism quite like a cease and desist order from the city government. 12. The local library's annual book sale is usually a quiet affair, but the volunteer teams turned it into a black ops mission. The competition to find the best donations became so intense that members were conducting midnight inventory raids and hiding valuable first editions in secret locations behind the romance novels. One team went fully rogue and hired a professional rare book appraiser to identify hidden treasures before the doors even opened to the public. They were treating a charity fundraiser like the plot of a Nicolas Cage movie involving the Declaration of Independence. 13. The neighborhood Christmas caroling tradition mutated into a cutthroat a cappella war that would terrify a choir director. Groups weren't just singing Silent Night. They were hiring vocal coaches and conducting secret rehearsals in soundproof basements to perfect their harmonies. One group was disqualified for using pitch correction software on a hidden speaker, while another was accused of slashing the tires of the rival group's transport van. The police eventually shut it down due to noise complaints and aggressive harmonization after midnight. 14. The weekly bingo night at St. Jude's Community Hall is a hotbed of geriatric rage that would scare a UFC fighter. The tension snapped when Ethel accused Mildred of using a lucky dauber, equipped with magnetized chips to cheat the system. Mildred retaliated by accidentally spilling a large grape soda all over Ethel's winning card right before the final call. The parish priest had to physically intervene to separate the two. And now, the church creates a neutral playing field by providing standardized, non-magnetic daubers for everyone to prevent further violence. 15. The Great Scarecrow War of Oregon started as a friendly contest between 2 farming families, but it escalated until they were building mechanized monsters. These weren't straw men. They were smoke-breathing robots that terrified actual human children. The final entry required a degree in mechanical engineering to operate and looked like something out of a Terminator movie. The competition finally ended when one of the hydraulic systems malfunctioned and accidentally set an entire cornfield on fire during the judging ceremony, proving that technology has no place in a hayfield. 16. If you bring a concrete mixer to a sandcastle contest, you are the problem. The annual beach competition turned into a civil engineering exam when participants started showing up with professional surveying equipment and hired architects. They were using industrial tools disguised as plastic buckets. The organizers finally had to move the entire contest to a different beach because regular vacationers filed complaints about not being able to find a single square foot of sand to lay a towel down amidst the construction zones. It wasn't a beach trip, it was a hard hat area. 17. Winning the annual chili pepper eating contest cost Bob more than just his dignity. It landed him in the hospital for 3 days with a completely numb tongue. His victory was the result of an 8-month self-torture regimen that looked more like special forces training than a hobby. He systematically increased capsaicin levels, studied professional pain management techniques, and used deep meditation just to stop himself from screaming. He did get the plastic trophy, but his reward was a liquid diet and the inability to taste his own victory meal for a month. 18. Martha wanted the perfect roses for the garden club competition, and she was willing to destroy her life to get them. She installed a computerized watering system that cost more than her car and literally hired a plant psychologist to talk to the bushes. She drained her retirement savings to import rare soil from a specific region in France. She took home the blue ribbon, but she came home to an empty house because her husband left her for a woman who was happy with dandelions and didn't talk to the hydrangeas. 19. Karen's mission to dominate the office holiday party planning committee involved a level of bureaucracy that would make the federal government jealous. She hired professional event coordinators and created detailed project management systems for a night that usually involves cheap wine and awkward conversation. She developed party themes that required actual construction permits and fire safety inspections. Her final budget exceeded the cost of most weddings and required sign-offs from 3 different department heads just to approve the ice sculpture. 20. The Office Fantasy Football League stopped being a game and started looking like insider trading on Wall Street. Participants weren't just checking stats. They were hiring professional data analysts and creating complex spreadsheets to track player hamstring tightness. One guy literally burned his vacation days just to attend NFL practices with binoculars to gauge team morale. The commissioner finally disbanded the league after it was discovered that someone tried to bribe a stadium janitor for inside information about a quarterback's paper cut. When you are committing corporate espionage for a plastic trophy, you need to reevaluate your life choices. 21. There is a special kind of nerd rage reserved for backyard weather station fanatics. Neighbors waged a literal forecast war, installing duplicate sensors and building Stevenson screens that looked like alien communication devices. They started accusing each other of barometric doping by artificially manipulating pressure readings. The feud only ended when a local TV meteorologist roasted the entire block on air because a cold front proved everyone wrong. They were forced to submit a unified neighborhood model, which is just a fancy way of saying they all agreed to look out the window before making predictions. 22. 2 suburban mothers decided to turn their daughter's Girl Scout cookie sales into a hostile corporate takeover. They weren't just setting up card tables, they hired actual marketing firms and created customer databases that rivaled the NSA. They established distribution networks for Thin Mints that operated with the efficiency and ruthlessness of a drug cartel. The troop leader had to intervene when they started carving up territory like mob bosses. Both mothers were eventually banned from future sales and legally required to attend anger management counseling because they threatened to kneecap someone over a box of Samoas. 23. The morning carpool drop-off line at Northwood Elementary became a daily, passive-aggressive demolition derby. Mothers utilized their massive SUVs like tanks to block rivals and cut into the line, treating the school zone like a monster truck rally. The parent group chat turned into a battlefield of scathing texts about spatial awareness. It got so dangerous that the principal had to use the school budget to hire a traffic warden just to manage the parental road rage. If you are risking a vehicular manslaughter charge to get your kid to math class 30 seconds earlier, you are the problem. 24. The annual company picnic is supposed to be about bad burgers and networking, but the horseshoe tournament turned into an Olympic qualifier. Participants started training with professional pitching coaches and installed regulation courts in their backyards to practice on weekends. They were out there doing physics calculations for optimal throwing angles while their families ignored them. The HR department had to hire professional judges and purchase additional liability insurance after several injury incidents involving overzealous victory dances. When you need a waiver to throw a piece of metal at a stick, the fun is officially over. 25. The local genealogy society descended into chaos when members started competing to see who had the most royal bloodline. It went from sharing family trees to forging medieval documents. One woman spent her retirement savings hiring private investigators in Europe to prove she was the rightful heir to a non-existent duchy in Luxembourg. Another member was caught vandalizing a cemetery to alter a date on a gravestone just to fit his narrative. They were literally desecrating the dead just to feel superior at a potluck dinner. 26. Martha's obsession with winning the best Christmas cookie contest spiraled into a full-blown culinary madness. She didn't just buy a cookbook. She attended pastry school in France and installed a professional convection oven that required a dedicated power grid. She developed a secret recipe using ingredients imported from 4 different countries and renovated her kitchen to include a temperature-controlled storage room for premium chocolate. She spent more on flour and butter than most people spend on a used car. The cookies were delicious, sure, but they tasted faintly of desperation and second mortgages. 27. The neighborhood pickleball feud mutated into a high-tech decibel war that no one saw coming. Residents weren't just complaining. They bought professional sound meters and hired acoustical engineers to build plywood noise shields around the court. One guy started wearing a GoPro solely to document illegal grunting for future litigation. The city council finally stepped in to ban evening play and actually impounded 3 homemade decibel cannons that were being used to blast sound back at the players after 10 p.m. Nothing says community spirit like weaponized audio equipment in a retirement village. 28. The neighborhood snowman building contest became so intense that families started stockpiling clean snow in their chest freezers back in November. One dad built a fortified snow fort around his creation and stood guard all night with a leaf blower to prevent sabotage. The police were eventually called when he allegedly attacked a rival's snowman with a thermos of hot coffee in a fit of rage. When you are assaulting frozen water with a caffeinated beverage at 3 in the morning, you need to take a long, hard look at your priorities. 29. The holiday inflatables arms race went nuclear when neighbors started installing 12-foot Santas and 20-foot Grinches that could be seen from space. One house had a reindeer display synchronized to EDM that kept the whole block awake. It ended when a roof literally collapsed under the weight of a massive snow globe dome. The HOA had to institute a strict 1 inflatable per property rule, which just led to neighbors smuggling elves into their yards at night like contraband. They are running a black market for plastic decorations because they can't handle a simple restriction. 30. Board home security cam owners created a raccoon leaderboard that turned suburban pest control into a fantasy sport. They awarded points for time on porch, bin raid creativity, and eye shine intensity. One guy was disqualified for baiting the animals with marshmallows to boost his stats, which the neighbors claimed was performance enhancement. Animal control had to end the season early because the raccoon population exploded, but the trophy still went to a particularly aggressive creature named Trash Goblin 7. It is arguably the weirdest use of surveillance technology in history. 31. The city's recycling purity contest turned into a terrifying display of environmental zealotry. People were buying industrial label removers and using blacklights to check for glue residue on jars. One family got docked points for wish cycling a garden hose, and they actually appealed the decision with a 40-slide PowerPoint presentation at the town hall. After 3 unauthorized dumpster dive audits where neighbors were digging through each other's trash, the mayor dissolved the leaderboard. If you are washing your yogurt cups with more care than your car, you have lost the plot. 32. A suburban dad named Rick spent 8 months training for his neighborhood's annual lawn mowing competition like he was Rocky Balboa. He practiced different striping patterns, bought a $1,500 zero-turn mower, and studied grass growth charts. In the end, he lost to his 70-year-old neighbor who used a rusted push mower and drank a beer while doing it. Rick was so devastated that he filed a formal grievance with the city council about unfair equipment advantages. There is no sore loser quite like a man defeated by a senior citizen and some Kentucky bluegrass. 33. The local sourdough guild split over starter lineage in a scandal dubbed Loafgate. People were bragging about their 1890s yeast strains like Crypto Bros talking about Bitcoin. The bubble burst when a lab test revealed that 2 of the most ancient starters were actually just identical supermarket yeast from last Tuesday. The betrayal was palpable. Now, new rules require blind bakes and the use of neutral flour to stop flavor laundering. It is a lot of drama for a loaf of bread that is going to be stale in 2 days anyway. 34. The local dog park's annual costume contest escalated when pet owners stopped buying outfits and started hiring theatrical designers. People were spending thousands on custom fabric and hiring animal behaviorists to train their dogs for a runway walk. One woman taught her poodle to operate mechanical wings through a complex treat reward system that required backup batteries strapped to the poor dog's back. The dog didn't know it was a mythical creature. It just wanted a biscuit. When your pet's outfit costs more than your mortgage, you need to seek help. 35. Sally's quest to dominate the church's annual silent auction wasn't about charity. It was about absolute power. She created a detailed bidding strategy that would impress a hedge fund manager, recruiting family members as decoy bidders to drive up prices on items she didn't even want. She spent weeks studying the spending habits of other parishioners through their social media posts, maintaining spreadsheets that tracked everyone's maximum bid potential. She even hired her accountant to optimize her auction portfolio to ensure she walked away with the quilt in the gift basket, leaving everyone else with nothing but resentment and empty wallets. 36. A friendly home brewing competition between 2 neighbors, Chad and Kyle, turned into a scientific arms race that threatened the local ecosystem. They started analyzing water pH levels like they were running a municipal treatment plant and importing rare hops from New Zealand that cost more per ounce than gold. They accused each other of yeast espionage and set up security cameras around their fermentation tanks. The rivalry ended explosively when Chad's experimental pressure vessel blew up, coating Kyle's prize-winning roses in 5 gallons of artisanal IPA. It was a sticky, hoppy disaster that smelled like a frat house for weeks. 37. The annual cornhole tournament at the county fair is usually a casual affair, but participants turned it into a high-stakes physics experiment. Teams started using aerodynamic beanbags that were technically illegal and hiring actual physics professors to calculate optimal throwing angles based on wind resistance. They were practicing 8 hours a day in custom-built training facilities that looked like NASA launch sites. The tournament was eventually moved to a different county after noise complaints from professional-grade trash talk that was deemed unsportsmanlike by the local 4-H club. 38. The annual chili cook-off at the fire station became a chemical warfare experiment when contestants decided regular peppers were for weaklings. They started researching capsicum extraction methods in their garages and growing their own ghost peppers in climate-controlled environments that looked like something out of Breaking Bad. One participant actually required full hazmat gear just to handle his ingredients safely. After 3 judges required immediate medical attention for chemical burns to their taste buds, the contest was permanently moved outdoors to ensure proper ventilation and prevent a mass casualty event. 39. Gary wanted to build the ultimate backyard deck for the neighborhood home improvement contest, but he ended up building a monument to hubris. He hired structural engineers to design features that definitely required building permits he didn't have. He created an outdoor living space that was featured in 3 magazines but violated 17 separate city codes. It was a beautiful structure that terrified his insurance company and probably lowered the property value of every house on the block due to the sheer size of the thing. 40. The annual community garage sale turned into a masterclass in predatory capitalism. 2 neighbors competed for the highest profit margin by hiring professional stagers to arrange their old junk like a high-end boutique. One guy created a fake backstory for a rusted bicycle, claiming it belonged to a minor celebrity, while his rival hired a sign spinner to divert traffic away from the cul-de-sac. It ended when the IRS sent them both audit letters because they were technically running unlicensed pawn shops out of their driveways. 41. The neighborhood's Christmas door decorating contest became so intense that families started hiring professional interior designers and spending mortgage payments on ornaments. One house featured a synchronized light show programmed by actual Disney engineers, which is just cheating. Another neighbor installed a snow machine that buried 3 parked cars and required city snowplows to dig them out. When your holiday spirit requires heavy machinery to clean up, you might want to scale it back a notch. 42. The drone light show neighbors tried to out-choreograph each other's Christmas displays, and the FAA was not amused. Waypoints, flight stacks, and waiver applications piled up on the desks of federal bureaucrats. A mid-air snowflake collision rained plastic propellers down on the block like a localized hailstorm. The city finally had to step in and limit drone swarms to 5 units per household. Both families immediately pivoted to laser projectors that could blind a pilot because, clearly, they learned nothing. 43. You think birdwatching is peaceful? Not in this county. The annual Big Year bird count became a felony investigation. Participants were trespassing on private property in camouflage gear just to spot a rare warbler. One fanatic was caught using high-powered speakers to blast mating calls, which is highly illegal, while another was accused of releasing exotic pet store birds into the wild just to pad his numbers. The Audubon Society had to issue a restraining order to stop them from harassing the local wildlife and each other. 44. The grocery store battlefield saw its fiercest warriors in the extreme couponing aisles. 2 women, Brenda and Sharon, turned saving money into a full-contact sport. They would create strategic distractions in the cereal aisle to steal the last coupon booklet and timed their checkout runs with the precision of a bank heist. One of them was even caught hiding a rival's shopping cart in the frozen food section. After a month-long war of attrition, they both ended up saving a grand total of $17, but the emotional cost required years of therapy. 45. A 45-minute standoff occurred in a crowded mall parking lot during Christmas week, and it was the most intense game of chicken ever played. 2 minivan drivers refused to yield for a single parking spot, leading to a duel of angry glares and passive-aggressive inching forward. It caused a line of backed-up traffic that stretched for miles until mall security was forced to intervene and declare a winner based on who arrived 3 seconds earlier. It was a masterclass in stubbornness. 46. The election for PTA president at Oakhaven Elementary was dirtier than a national presidential campaign. Candidates hired opposition researchers to dig up dirt on each other's past chaperone duties. One mom was accused of embezzlement regarding the glitter budget, while another was caught bribing the lunch lady to distribute campaign buttons with the pizza. The principal finally canceled the election and appointed himself as dictator after someone hacked the school's email list to spread rumors about a lice outbreak. 47. The neighborhood block party's annual volleyball tournament became an Olympic-level training camp for middle-aged accountants. Participants hired professional coaches and installed regulation sand courts in their backyards to practice their serves. They created training regimens involving sports psychologists and nutritional consultants. The tournament required liability insurance and professional referees because the players were taking it way too seriously for a game played with a net held up by 2 trees. 48. The elementary school's annual fun run turned into a training camp for future Olympians, or at least that's what the parents thought. They hired track coaches for their 6-year-olds and designed custom nutrition plans that banned sugar. They created detailed race strategies involving wind resistance calculations and optimal pacing techniques. One mother was banned for attempting to give her son performance supplements disguised as gummy vitamins. When you are doping a first grader for a participation ribbon, you have issues. 49. Two coffee shop owners turned their daily customer competition into psychological warfare. They were hiring baristas away from each other like sports teams poaching players. They created loyalty programs with ridiculous rewards that made no financial sense. The rivalry culminated in one memorable morning when they both offered free coffee until one of them literally ran out of beans and declared bankruptcy. It was a war of attrition fought with caffeine and stubbornness. I want names. Who is the absolute psycho in your neighborhood right now? The one measuring grass with a ruler? Expose their madness in the comments. I read everything. And if you don't subscribe and hit that like button right now, I'm personally reporting your unauthorized weeds to the HOA. Don't test me.